Welcome to episode 123 of the Campus Comic Cast as we are ready to bust out a Muddy Monster move. My name is Scott Reed and I am joined by
Mike Atchison
and Shad Schubert.
And of course I mentioned the Muddy Monster busting out a move because you can now be the proud owner of a Muddy Monster mini bust courtesy of Muddy Monster Comics in Murphysboro, Illinois. Mike has in his he has about 5 or 6 of them in, I believe, at this point, unpainted Muddy Monster bust. He is super proud of them. If you check the Muddy Monster Comics Facebook page, you can see an image of them. They look really, really good. So if you're into statues, and of course, if you have any ties to the Southern Illinois area, you probably are familiar with the Muddy Monster. But of course, you can find that Muddy Monster mini bust at 1422 Walnut Street in Murphysboro, Illinois. Stores open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And on this episode, we're going to talk about the Peacemaker HBO Max series. We're going to speak on Stray Dogs 2, Dog Days, and time allowing, we're going to wrap up the episode with another CLZ Shake. So, Mike, you want to kick us off with your thoughts and feelings on the Peacemaker series?
Well, I would love to, Scott. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're so happy to be here.
I am. Okay, so since it's a television series, I'm not going to go through an episode by episode synopsis. I'll just say, to lead into my thoughts, that this is sort of a sequel in part to the Suicide Squad movie by James Gunn this past summer, that Peacemaker was a fairly prominent character in, and it's basically, that the Suicide Squad was, it was not to spoil that movie, but if it's been out for a while now, I don't think I will, but he was one of many members of a team that were given the choice of, once released from Belle Reve prison, that if they basically helped defeat, they were on a secret mission for Amanda Waller, and there were some things that Peacemaker did during this movie that were pretty despicable, and it wasn't, when the TV series was announced, it was like, wow, I hope they improve this guy and his character and our feelings about him, and to be honest, they did. It's one of those shows that it is so over the top, but to be honest, it had to be over the top to be even remotely palatable. I mean, we have Peacemaker is Christopher Smith, has a father that is a Nazi and a Nazi villain, the White Knight, I believe was his name, and he was basically equipped by his father, to kind of, his father was wanting him to kind of follow his path, but Christopher Smith had a little bit more of a conscience. I don't know who his mother was, but he maybe took after his mother. But I just think that he was. This is probably the most James Gunn movie you could ever come up with. It's like James Gunn was unleashed. I mean, he could make these characters the way he wanted. He didn't really hold back at all, like he might maybe in Guardians of the Galaxy, which I love both of those films. But I just think that he made this. I was actually just completely surprised of how much I like this movie. I mean, they gave us, if anybody has heard about Peacemaker, you're probably in the minority, but he was a quality character from the 60s. First appearance was in, I'm not sure what issue, but it was in the series Fighting Five. and he didn't have a whole lot of definition over the years. In the 80s, whenever DC acquired the rights to the character, they expanded on his character and they basically gave him a little bit more backstory in that, his father was a Nazi and a war criminal, and he had a helmet that somehow contained the souls of the people he's killed in the past that talked to him. Also allusions to some psychosis and some mental illness. But I'll be honest, against my expectations, I was very pleasantly surprised with this show. I looked forward to, for the first time, seeing the next episode of a DC-based TV show.
This is issue 40 of Fighting Force. That was Peacemaker's first appearance.
Okay, issue 40. Very good, thanks. I mean, he's a moron, but he's like he wants to be good.
He's a lovable moron.
Yeah, he wants to be redeemed, and the interactions. I mean, he's the perfect representation of a flawed hero. I mean, you get tired of the dramatic soap opera style representation of the almost. It was just so put on flaws. This seemed like a real flaw, and the interaction between him and another flawed character, the character of Adrian Chase, the vigilante, he's nothing like the comics character. But let me tell you, that it just makes me laugh thinking about it. I think overall the cast was fantastic. Jennifer Holland played Amelia Harcourt, and she was the sort of the straight person to lead the team. Well, I mean her, and there was what's the guy's name?
Murn. You talking about the actor?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I don't want to spoil much with this, but he was.
Well, this is a review where it's you can spoil all you want.
Okay.
So yeah,
Murn's really the straight man, but Jennifer Holland plays the one that's more. He's the mockingbird behind the scenes for the Secret Six. He's kind of like pulling triggers without being directly involved too much. But Jennifer Holland, or Amelia Harcourt, is the team lead, and she's the field leader. And she, at first she can't stand Christopher Smith, Peacemaker, but she actually starts to see through his ridiculous facade of being a macho and misogynistic, and sees his vulnerable points and actually starts to like him. There's there's just points of, surprisingly poignant moments, like in one of the episodes, I think it might have been like the second to last or the last episode, where one of the team members, Economos, he's the guy they call Diebeard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a joke throughout the movie that Diebeard, I mean, Peacemaker gives him this nickname because you can see that he dyed his beard to look younger, but the gray was out, was growing out, and he just was too cheap or too lazy to get it dyed again. And anyway, he gives a totally unexpected diatribe about why he did it, why he didn't keep it up, and why he's trying to live up to other people's expectations. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was pretty well portrayed. The cast was great. Robert Patrick he plays the role of the White Knight, the Nazi father of Christopher Smith, and he was fantastic. Probably my favorite.
You definitely didn't like him, but that was the point.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he was the villain you really loved to hate. And then Daniel Brooks, for anybody that watched Orange is the New Black, she was a pretty prominent character in that show. She played Adebayo. She's the daughter. In the show, she's the daughter of Amanda Waller, and she was sort of Amanda's plant. And so there was a lot of interesting twists and turns there. I mean, I could go on and talk about all these different characters, but I'm going to stop now, let you guys talk a little bit about it, and then tell me what you think was good and bad and what was ugly.
If you talk about this series, you have to talk about the opening dance sequence. I think it's mandatory.
Yeah.
Right. Now, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a correction. I don't remember if I said this on an episode of the cast or not. So we may have said this at one point before or after we were recording. But I think I said something about Alan Tudyk having been responsible for the choreography of that dance number. And of course, he's the guy that was in Tucker and Dale. Okay, that is incorrect. He was just the stand-in for John Cena when they were practicing when John Cena couldn't be there. Now, that's a pretty high value stand-in,
Right.
for somebody that he was just happened to be hanging around for him to do that on this dance number. So anybody I've told that to previously, there's our correction for the episode. But I had to at some point just go look up the lyrics to the song. Because sometimes they
Did you have to?
I felt obligated to, because it's like is this something that I had to, and I also had to go make sure there wasn't some certain hidden meaning to this, because some of these lyrics you could probably take the wrong way if you really wanted to, but to find out what the song actually was about. So I probably shouldn't sit here and just read the entire song off, but when you have lines with dancing with your blinkers on, throw your dog the invisible bone, that perfectly sums up this series.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Are those actual lyrics to an 80s or 90s glam rock?
Since you are, it
song?
is. It's from a band called Wigwam. And let's see if I can find when this song. I just have the lyrics. I don't think I have a release date. There's actually a longer version, apparently. I really should be letting Shad take this question because he's the music guy.
Yeah.
But I don't see 2001. It's from.
Yeah, I thought it was a newer song. Yeah.
Yeah, Norwegian glam metal band formed in 2001. And like I said, there is a longer version of this. We get the short version for Peacemaker intro.
Well, I've heard it enough that it's stuck in my head.
Yeah. Talk about earworm. Yeah. Now my son he's a performing arts major in college, and like he was home from college one weekend, and I said, here, I got a couple things you got to see. So the first thing I showed him was the last scene in Hawkeye where they do the complete I Could Do This All Day number, Broadway number from Rogers the Musical. And he got a bit of kick out of this. And I said, all right, now you got to watch this. So I showed him this opening dance sequence, which is deliberately designed for it's like something that you would see like a bunch of high school students do that run a dance squad. It's just like, It's bad. And it's meant to be bad. He thought it was hilarious. So he hadn't seen any of the rest of the show, doesn't care to see any rest of the show, but he thought that opening sequence was just amazing. So he got a huge kick out of that because he's had to work through these, performances over and over. So he gets the joke that's associated with that. So
it's I keep hearing it's the opening credits that's taught you not to skip opening credits. Like, it's the one like that when that button comes up that's like skip opening credits, you go, no, I don't want to.
I know. I never throughout the whole series skipped the intro.
No, neither did I. I watched it twice all the way through, and I never skipped an intro.
And every character of any note was part of that dance sequence.
If they have more than like one or two lines, they are in that. So let's see. It's like the Senator Goff isn't in that dance number, right?
No, okay, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah, that was so early on.
He's probably like the biggest character that isn't part of that. But even
even the old man that's the neighbor.
Old man that's the neighbor, the guy who's cleaning the hospital at the very beginning. He's it's absolutely crazy. So now, okay, Mike, I'm gonna pick on you about this forever. Just because, but did you watch all the little extra scenes at the end of the episodes?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I guess for people who maybe haven't watched this yet, do stick around through the credits, because they don't really have I guess they have an extended scene. So they have one of the scenes from the episode that they extend out, sometimes it's like 5 seconds, sometimes it's 15, 20, 30 seconds. So it is something
where they kind of ad lib a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. There's the one where and it's like the sheriff, that the replacement sheriff that comes in, and he's ad-libbing, and it's like he's talking about swinging his hips from side to
Yes.
side.
It was the stupidest thing, but I couldn't help but be amused by it. I don't always get amused by stupid stuff, but even this guy who was like the inside man for the butterflies,
Right.
they were the alien nemesis here, and we talked before.
Okay, so he wasn't the inside initially, wasn't the inside man for
Right.
the butterflies. He was initially
Murn's
inside man.
Right.
And then was taken over whenever the butterflies come in full force to, try to, wipe things out. So
yeah.
The extended scene where they're listing off all of the things he could have pinned the crime on instead of his dad. They're just like, it just goes on forever and ever.
Yeah. And then like some of the titles to each of the individual episodes, like probably my favorite title of an episode is Better Golf Dead, which is obviously a play off of Better Off Dead, which I love that movie from the 80s.
Yep.
But now
you had the Chode Less Traveled.
The Chode Less Traveled. Monkey Dory, that was the scene where they had the gorilla attack, right?
Yes.
Murn.
My favorite was Stop Dragging My Heart Around. Dragging his
Dragon. Yeah.
And then it's Cow or Never. It was so punny, corny that it was good. I mean, it's like a fourth grader came up with those titles.
Well, I would have said a seventh grader, but yeah, you're kind of right.
Okay,
on.
maybe more seventh.
Now I know I'm in the minority on this because other than a handful of scenes, and when you have 8 episodes of a series, a handful of scenes that I really, really enjoyed, and then a lot of it I was just like it was constant eye roll for me. So now for sure, if not my favorite scene in the series, one of my favorite scenes is, I think it's around episode 5. It might be in episode 4, but it's episode 4 or 5. The White Dragon is in prison, right? And Peacemaker is going to go visit his dad in prison. And of course, they don't want him to talk to his father because they know they'll get out that it's his fault that he's in jail.
Right.
So Adebayo basically is hinting to Vigilante, we could do something about this because his dad's not a good guy. And, he gets the idea, I'm going to go get myself into prison and go kill him is basically, what's going to happen. So this is the one time in this series where I'm like, if this was the character that we had gotten for Vigilante, I could really enjoy watching this character. But the rest of the time he's portrayed just as a buffoon. So what happens in this scene is he basically goes and sit down with White Dragon and like 2 or 3 other white supremacists, and he started talking. He's like, why don't we go around the table and all of us say something that about a Black American who has affected American history, and he's just like, there's this really, really long soliloquy and
at a table full of white supremacists.
Oh yeah, exactly, at a table full of white. And like, if we had more of that character, I could have really, really enjoyed this series a lot. Because I thought that was smart, funny. Instead, we get scenes like, I think it was in like episode 7, where we get Vigilante running off in the middle of the fight because he has to go pee, and he pees with his pants all the way down on the ground, and we have this whole discussion about, why are you peeing with your pants on the ground? Well, I don't like things touching my butt when I'm peeing. It's like, really? This is
so toilet humor.
Yeah, it's just there's too much of that nonsense in this series for me, for my taste. And I know I obviously have different tastes than a lot of other people. And I really feel like the language in this series is obsessive. It's way too much. Like I've talked before, like there used to be a podcast that I would listen to. And this podcast, if the guy didn't cuss or yawn, the podcast would have been about a third as long as what it was. It's the same way, with this movie. Like, there's been a lot of talk online about like how Jonah Hill apparently has cursed more in productions than Samuel L. Jackson, and like Samuel L. Jackson apparently wants to get his title back. Well, I feel like John Cena maybe passed them both up in this one series alone. So like he may be the new guy on top. So it was just so much. And to me, whenever I see something like that, I think that's just lazy writing. We want this character. Oh, this character's mad. Oh, let's drop an F-bomb. Oh, this character's scared. Oh, let's drop an F-bomb. Oh, this character's tough. Oh, let's drop an F-bomb.
I could see maybe one person be the cusser or two persons be the cussers, but it was, I mean, everybody, including Adebayo,
When you have a van full of 5 people.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost contagious, and one person starts the F-bomb, then everybody. I get that a little bit. I mean, I think that if they would have stuck with one or two people that's their propensity, and there always are people like that in groups, crowds, or whatever. You got the people that just always can't refine their language, but not really usually everybody.
And like I'll give you a perfect example of that in a documentary. There's a documentary called Citizen. Oh gosh, I can't remember if it's Citizen 5 or Citizen 4. I'm gonna say Citizen 4. It's about Edward Snowden. All right, so Edward Snowden's staying in this hotel, and he has Glenn Greenwald. I can't remember the name. Laura something. She's the documentary person, and then somebody coming from the one of the, I think, the Guardian, or no, from another paper in the UK, and they're all meeting in Hong Kong. This is just after he's stolen all this information from the NSA. And in the first half of this movie, they are all very cordial and watching how they speak. And at the last half of the movie, their language has changed once they have gotten to know each other. So it just kind of shows that dynamic. Early on, when people don't know each other, they talk differently than when they are familiar with each other. And then you have their language to each other really never changes. It starts one way and stays that way, even when they don't know each other versus when they do know each other. You know, comic shops are not a place that you go into and don't expect to hear any language, right? But every time, you hear somebody yelling and screaming and a little kid walks in, and all of a sudden it all stops because people know that that's not, what everybody wants to hear, right? So anyway, I'm going off on a tirade or rant or whatever, but it's just to me, it's just so much. It was just way too much.
It was a valid point. I don't know that it didn't throw me. It didn't detract. I looked at it as this vulgarity was a large part of the point of this. Is he's, again, for the over the top, because look at it. If you remember when it feels like yesterday, but at the same time years ago, when we reviewed every one of the issues of Vigilante. And it's Vigilante as a costumed character. His MO doesn't fit a costumed character. It's not like Punisher. Punisher had a t-shirt with a skull. That fits. Vigilante's like his little unitard with the V-shaped emblem, whatever, with his, ski
red
mask
visor
and goggles. And Paul Kupperberg, I listened to a podcast, by the way, that had Paul Kupperberg. They were talking about Peacemaker, and Paul actually, Kate brought him on. So that was really interesting. But, he said, I think editorial edict pretty much told him you need to make him look like a superhero, but we want him to be more of a Punisher type character. That doesn't work in the movies, TV shows, and it didn't work in the comics, really, because that wasn't a great series. I mean, the premise was okay, but the depiction wasn't great. So I think,
and it was better when Kupperberg was writing.
It did, yeah, and it got better after Wolfman, which is, Wolfman's a great writer, one of my favorites. But so my point is, they almost had to make this so over the top and ridiculous to make it like believable. It's like, for a guy to dress up in that vigilante costume who idolizes Peacemaker, who's demented and what do you call it? He's been damaged by his father. He acts this way because he's damaged goods. And you get that with him. That's probably the best part of the series for me, is that you ended up feeling for a moron like Peacemaker because he was damaged goods. But Vigilante, he's only that way because that's his idol and he wants to be his buddy. Well, so I thought it was brilliant in that way. But There are some things, I'm like, okay, I get the whole cursing thing. I want to hear what Shad has to say, because Shad, I think you're the only one that's actually watched episodes twice.
Oh, I watched them all twice as well.
You did?
Did you
What
really?
do you guys sleep like 4 hours a night? What the heck? Man.
It goes down smoothly. No, and I think the cast makes this entire show, and you guys have said, Mikey said that, is just like the way that they build together everything was just like there wasn't one person that took too much of the spotlight in a way that it didn't feel unbalanced. It felt like an actual group of people talking, which you don't always get from a series. You've got obviously the one who wants to be the center of attention, Peacemaker, in it all. But it really does feel like a group of people going through this adventure, to a point where like even like Adebayo feels like the main character through half the series. It's like, and I like her and a thought of her mom being Amanda Waller and she being the plant in the middle of this mission, and that she's got this other thing she has to do, but she starts to actually like get along with these people and be friends with these people, is its own story alongside the Peacemaker story of him coming to terms with his past and his family and who he is, and that he doesn't have to be this monster that his dad kind of raised, and that he can be good and he doesn't have to put on this facade of macho man. And the even like to the end of the series when he waits at the hospital for Harcourt while she's in the bed, like the softie in me was really like that was like, oh, look at that, like she even held his hand for a little bit. And the growth of those two characters in their own different ways really kind of made that. And I guess, and everybody grows in that story. I mean, your Economos kind of becomes something more and kind of gives himself a little bit more worth, because he was kind of didn't see himself as having much worth. And I guess, does he become the warden of Belle Reve at the end of the show? Is that what they're kind of alluding to?
I took that to mean he just went back to his job that he was doing before.
Because I know that Economos
underpaying and being underpaid and everything. Yeah.
He was the warden of Belle Reve at some point, right? In the comics, I believe, is what I read. I was looking up stuff.
I don't remember ever seeing that.
I don't remember that, but that doesn't mean anything.
Because I was doing a little digging to go like, okay, who's been created and who's real, who's from the comics, and it seems like he's the only other, besides Peacemaker and Vigilante, he's the only other one that came up as being in the comics, and it says that John Economos was warden of Belle Reve.
Probably in name only, I'd say, because the character itself, I can't see him being a warden. He was more of the tech guy. He was there.
Right.
Yeah. But that's interesting. I didn't research that, and I didn't remember that from the Vigilante series. But Scott's looking it up. I can tell right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find anything. I'm misspelling Economos because that's not an easy name to spell, And now
Adebayo is the one. I mean, that's the one character on the show I'd like to meet for a cup of coffee and just because it seemed like a really cool person. She's
According to CBR.com, in the world of DC Comics, Economos is a warden at Belle Reve. However, in the DCEU, he begins as a low-level operative for Amanda Waller, and this is courtesy of Caitlin Chappelle. This is dated February 18th, 2022 on CBR.com.
Wow, Chad, good pickup there.
And because I'm reading it right now, of course, the scene where he kills the gorilla with the chainsaw will go down in history. So
that's right.
You could probably talk about a dozen different scenes that were just crazy amazing. Yeah. Any parallels to Secret Invasion that you've seen, or was it not quite Secret Invasion, Scott?
Well, I mean, I guess any Invasion of the Body Snatchers style thing you could actually kind of relate that to. So I guess you could say the difference is, the difference is you have in Secret Invasion, you have Skrulls coming in that are basically replacing certain people as opposed to killing them, and then some of them they come back. Yeah. And they also initially in Secret Invasion, a lot of them don't know that they're Skrulls. So
Oh,
that's also they've been, I don't know, programmed to not remember. There's a really really good Captain Marvel. I'd say the Marvel to emphasize that it's the Kree
yeah.
Marvel, where there's a 4-issue series in Secret Invasion where it's basically he's trying to decide because he's dead. It's like, how am I alive? Am I a Skrull? And he's actually, debating back and forth with himself about whether or not it's him or he's just a Skrull who thinks he is Captain Marvel. So that's, I guess that's the one part that's a little bit different. It's just like maybe their spin on the whole
Yeah,
Agent
it's just
Snatcher's idea.
it's just one of those major event things that you think, well, this was kind of like a Marvel major event, but not quite. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'll eventually do something like they'll do that on big screen or small screen eventually. Secret Invasion.
Actually, it's up in. I mean, that's in the works.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I think I've heard that before. Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson's returning. They got Amelia Clark probably to be Abigail Brand, but they haven't. Nobody's said that officially. So, but yeah, it's in the works. So,
yeah.
I mean,
I was okay. We got to talk about not the final scene, but the last scene in the big battle at the end.
Oh yeah.
Where of course the JLA shows up late to the battle's over. The JLA shows up late, right? And you've got Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash. No Batman, if I remember correctly. We just have those.
No.
Now you don't ever actually, see up close Superman or Wonder Woman. I guess they couldn't get Gal Gadot or Henry Cavill to actually make an appearance.
Right.
So they're just kind of in shadow. But we do actually get Jason Momoa, and now I've forgotten his name.
Ezra Miller.
Thank
Miller,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. And they have a little exchange, and of course we got to add in Aquaman now dropping the F-bomb.
That is the one time I was like, they didn't need to and should not have had Arthur Curry drop the F-bomb.
Yeah, because that's still goes back to my complaint. Here I get to complain about Aquaman again. It's like Aquaman has always to me been this very noble character.
Yes.
And they are just, removing any nobility from that character. And here now they're just exaggerating it. And I think that maybe is my big complaint with this series. If this had been like Deadpool, where it was something that was completely and totally separated and isolated from the MCU or the Fox X-Men universe, there's not any crossover with anything else. It's a totally different ballgame. You can do what you want with these characters, but whenever they are very clearly planting this in the DCEU, I just find it problematic. And as over the top as this was, that character wasn't that over the top in the Suicide Squad. I mean, he was nonsensical, but it was taken to a next level in this series.
But he had no character in Suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
Do you feel like that, they know that we've got the Flash movie coming up and they're going to be able to reset whatever they want and they're going to split out into these multiverses. And so they kind of have freedom to say, let Aquaman throw the F word around, because that Momoa is going to be in this world and it is that thing. And we're going to we got an out now to make a shiny new Aquaman that is noble whenever we want to. So as soon as people get fed up with whatever this version is, we can just bail on it.
If it had been the MCU, where I know there's a lot of thought and planning going on in the future of the movies, I would say yes. But with Warner Brothers, they have
not thinking that far ahead.
They have not seen past anything. So I would say no. I don't think that
as much as I hate to agree with Scott, we all know I hate to agree with Scott. I think he's right on that Warner Brothers doesn't think past their own noses. They are past the box office receipts. However, that's a valid theory that Jason Momoa is a variation on a comic book character that has had several reboots and several iterations. Even whenever he was the harpoon armed Aquaman with long hair, he had an air of nobility around him. Mm-hmm. But even in the comics now, and if we ever talk about Justice League and Brian Michael Bendis's writing, I will say the same thing. he writes him as quippy and snarky and silly talking as if it were the Wonder Twins.
So
And
they're turning
Aquaman.
the comic version into the movie version is what
They
like
are.
they've done with like Tony
yes.
Stark and lots of other characters.
Yes, it's just not done right. And again, I'm sorry, DC. You know, if you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have been a writer for you, but I'm retired now. So.
But of course, Mike, I know you appreciated the mention of Batmite.
Yeah,
Series.
I love those Easter eggs. I love the Easter eggs. Oh my gosh, I should have written some of them down to prepare for tonight. But they talked about characters, not just. Hey, let's go back to that last scene. Okay, so again, yeah, that last scene was unnecessary. Fine, that's fan service, but I do like Ezra Miller, and I think he was in character if it was Wally West. But again, it's Barry, and again, that's off the mark. But what really bothered me the most was the special effects showing Superman sort of dangling in the air with one knee cocked up. I'm like, can you look any more like you're hanging from a tightrope or from a cable, a wire? I'm like, and you'd been better off if it was just the two of them and not Wonder Woman or silhouettes of Wonder Woman and Superman.
And I'm sorry, Flash could have gotten there immediately. He would have definitely beat Aquaman there.
That's always the case, though. Okay, that's an argument that's moot because that's always you look at the speedster should always arrive like
Amanda Waller's like waiting. Okay, let's see. Aquaman should be there in 15 minutes. So at 14:58, I'll call the Flash. You know, it's
that's something that's in everything like that.
And if I remember correctly, they've already announced that there's going to be a second season of Peacemaker.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
So the people who are really into Peacemaker are getting. I'll watch it, but I'm not like looking forward to it.
I won't like it. I'll watch it, but I won't like it.
I'm not gonna like it. You guys make me. It's okay. You know what? It's like one of them deals where beggars can't be choosers, and where we're DC characters who I have a love for DC characters, so much so that I'm not happy with maybe modern representations of them, because I don't think they're true to my canon, my head canon. But it's nice to see a show that. It doesn't have the main. It's okay that they have Peacemaker. I think that's acting this way. I mean, really, he's been in the Charlton comics. He had his own little 4-issue miniseries. He starred in some of the Vigilante comics, but he hasn't had much other than that. So it's to me, it's kind of a success on that merit or on that alone. And bringing in some other like minor characters. They couldn't have done this with some major characters.
Well, you wanna grade it? I'll go first. Cause I'm gonna have the low grade, so that way it can go uphill from my grades. So I gave it a VG fine 5.0. I again, to me, it's just my big pet peeve. All on these shows, they're comic books, but they're treating them as funny books, not as comic books, and we're just getting too much nonsensical and built for a laugh, and it's getting to the point where I feel like it's going to keep snowballing, and they're going to start making just complete fun. We're going to get more Justice League roasts. They're just basically mocking these characters that many of which I've had experienced my entire life, and I just don't like where we're heading. And this just kind of takes us one step closer to that world where it's like I'm finally when these movies is going to come out, and I'm not going to want to watch it. So, go ahead, Mike.
Shad, Mike.
Shad,
Mike. Shad. Go, Shad.
All right. I put it at a 9.2 near mint. It complete rewatchability for me. The opening theme says it all. You can watch that opening theme. I know we spent some time on it, but you can watch that opening theme so many times, and just every time you watch it, watch a different character the entire time, and it's entertaining to do that. And that's kind of like the way I like rewatching the show, is I'm only paying attention to it out of the perspective of a different character. And I get where you're coming from with that, but we also lived in a world where we got just a quote unquote comic book movie style for so long, and so to get the variation of a horror movie or a mystery thriller like The Batman, and a really beautiful cinema movie like Eternals, and then you do have to have your comedy movies or your comedy shows like Peacemaker, and I think they all have a place in the world. So I 9.2 for me.
Chad, that's awesome.
Mike.
Scott, at least you're being honest. No, I'd say that I'd be lying if I said anything less than a 9.2 as well. I can't think of the last show, Marvel or DC, either one, that I've been that anxious to watch again. And you guys know me. I'm not necessarily the critic that can dissect a show as to why it's got merit and why it doesn't. But I walk away with my gauge is how I feel as I walk out the theater. And we'll talk about it sometime if we ever review the Batman. So, and which is on the opposite end of the spectrum as Suicide Squad, right? So, to your point, Scott, about that it could be that this hopefully this isn't a sign of things to come, that they're just going to say, oh gosh, just stupid third grade toilet humor is going to be what brings fans to the theaters or to the TV or whatever. So we're going to do more of it. I hope not, and I'm hoping that there's enough people in the places of power that can say, no, we need balance. We need to show that there's different takes on different characters, and the Batman is sort of like that. And there's places on that end, on this end, and in the middle. I'm not really worried about that. All I know is I walked away happy that I watched it, and eventually probably will watch the whole series again. So 9.2, right there with Shad.
All right. You guys can both be wrong. It's okay. I am absolutely in the minority on this one. I totally understand that. And you talk about shows. Hawkeye was that series for me where each week I was ready to see the next one. So not so much here with Peacemaker.
Different strokes for different folks.
That's right.
That's right.
That's nice that, again, I remember Dan, our long departed, not from this mortal plane, but a long departed Dan co-host he always said we live in we have an embarrassment of riches here. And if 20 years ago or whatever, God, it's been that long we've had these kind of movies. If you just said you had this much stuff to choose from, no way. Yeah. So.
All right.
Talked a lot about this.
Yeah. So let's move on. Stray Dogs 2, Dog Days, the 2-issue series from Image. Shad, I think you are going to take the lead on this, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Better known as the cutscenes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So I've got a little like one-liner or two-liner per dog, but just to give an overview of what these 2 issues did. Essentially, they are more story before, after, during Volume 1 of Stray Dogs. And this promised, I think the first issue promised 6 new stories, and then the other one did not promise 6 new stories. I noticed on the cover, I think it was actually 4 or 5, maybe. We'll see. I think it's 4. But so going into it, you get very much the same outlook. You have the same writer, same artist on it, Tony Flex, and I didn't write them down.
I'll find it. You keep going.
And so everything's still pretty together on this. We open with the first story is of Killer, who's the pug in the story, and
Trish Forstner.
That's right, Trish Forstner, who Tony Flex has like 2 new books coming out on Image like in the next couple of months, I guess. Or moving forward. I don't think they've even been solicited yet, but I noticed that they were coming out. But Trish does not have any work that I saw, and I was like, man, that artwork was good. I don't know why anybody wouldn't be using her. But anyway, so we start with Killer, who's the pug of our story, and they live with an older woman whose daughter and boyfriend, who Killer calls the monster, come to visit. No more information given. So that's kind of stories we're dealing with. Is like, okay, we just see that killer lives with this mom of this lady. The end.
I really thought, and it took me a while to catch this, is like, how does this story even tie into anything? So I thought maybe this one's a really, really old one where it's like, I thought for a while maybe Monster is the serial killer and this is like
Right.
his early
Yeah.
on. But then I realized, oh wait, Grandma has a Bluetooth headphone in her ear. This is obviously not set way, way in the past. So yeah, I just I have no idea why they had that story in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one was probably, I think, my most confused story out
Uh-huh.
of all of them. Uh, so then our next one we get is Gucci, who's our Chinese crescent, and Gucci is an Instagram star.
I like how
We
you
see
give the
that.
dog breed. That's important.
Yes, I thought that was important for me visually because like I'm just like, well, here's old Henry, Gucci's an Instagram star, and we see the picture feed that's kind of the comic in this one is just each feed is a cell, and then all of a sudden we see that Gucci and her owner Stephanie have gone missing, and Stephanie's sister is posting on Gucci's Instagram. So a little bit more connection to it, but still pretty far away from really giving us much except for that, if we would have seen, I think, in the main story that Gucci was acted like a star a little bit or a celebrity and had kind of like a stuck-upness to it maybe or something, this would make sense. But otherwise it's just like, oh, okay, here's this dog and we know a little bit more about it. Next we get Aldo, who is a just a mixed breed, and Aldo is with Victor and Killer, and they are at the dog napper's house already. So this is actually kind of just very much just pre-story in this one. And they are talking about how Aldo has a nice stick, and then Killer tries to trade him for a skeleton arm. And Aldo doesn't want the arm, so he puts it back. So it's just like, oh, there's this. And then Victor ends up trading it for a tennis ball. So this story was riveting.
Yeah.
The greatest ball ever.
Yeah.
Yes. Next we got Other Henry, who's a bull terrier. Other Henry is terrorized by the cat that lives with him, named Monster. I thought it was uncreative that they have Monster being the guy in the first story and then also the cat in this story. We could have done with another maybe name instead of Monster.
I'm going to give Tony Flex credit here that there has to be a reason for reuse of the term monster here. I don't know what it is, but I'm just gonna say there's probably some hidden meaning there. So
I like that. Well, and the fact that I like that there's this cat because we see that one night the owner of Other Henry and Monster gets attacked and killed, and we presume that Other Henry is taken at that time. And then we see the family mourning the loss of the woman, and Monster, the cat, is sad and goes and lays in the bed. I hope that in a volume 2 we get to see more of like maybe Monster's up to something like and is able to go rescue Other Henry. So yeah, what is the tie in there? I don't know if there has been any more stray dogs announced at all, but
not that I'm aware of.
But how do these dogs find their owner, or do they get into other kind of trouble in the meantime? So our next story is Imogen, who's the Mastiff, and Imogen. Okay, thanks. We start by seeing Imogen as a puppy terrorizing their owner, playing in the dog park. Then we see someone break into the house, and then we just all of a sudden just snap to Imogen is brought to the dog napper's house and introduced to a bunch of other dogs. And then she just lays in the corner and gets bigger and older as the other dogs play. So it seems like this killer has been up to it for a long time. By the amount of dogs that we go through and the way that they age.
And the stories are not told in chronological order, obviously.
No.
Which makes it tougher to follow. If there is some story he's trying to tell, that makes it tougher for a simpleton such as myself to follow because I can't keep tabs on the timeline.
Right.
No, I'm just focusing on each singular story. I'm not really doing a good job of.
You're right on.
Yeah. And then our last story of issue 1 is Roxanne, the Alaskan Malamute. I don't know how to say that name.
Malamute. Yeah.
Malamute. We see a woman sleeping in her bed, and she's awakened by a crash sound. This is probably my favorite story one, actually. And she wakes up and says, "I'm warning you, I have a very big dog." And we see that Roxanne is the big dog, has knocked over a plant in the living room. So that's and so she takes Roxanne to the pet wash the next day. And while they're there, they bump into the dog napper and Rusty, the dog, who seems to be, as we go on through these stories, seems to be oddly connected to this recruitment process of figuring out which dogs are the good ones to bring home. So Roxanne and her owner get away quickly, and the dog napper starts to get really loud and pushy as she gets in her car. And we see this behavior in another story later, is that the dog napper seems to be a little abrasive and pushy towards these women when he's trying to scope them out, it seems like. So that's issue 1.
Okay,
And
so
then,
one thing
yeah.
I want to mention, I just noticed this. I was flipping through the issue, and because they have all these pictures of readers' dogs at the very end, and
Yeah.
I think it's great that one of the dogs is named Jack Bauer. But here's this. This is from Tony Fleeks. He says, "Thanks to all the returning readers. Hopefully these stories added to your enjoyment of the book. We hope this felt more like the Lord of the Rings extended editions and not like when you put the CBI Jabba the Hutt in the first Star Wars." So to me, that kind of means like he's trying to, like, if you have ever tried to read the Silmarillion from Tolkien,
Yes.
which is just these little snippets and not even necessarily complete stories, that kind of makes that make a little bit more sense to me. So
Okay. So ideally, they could pop these stories into, whether they introduce it when they're introducing each dog in the main story, but you could make an extended cut of the comic even.
Of the comic, exactly.
That does make it more acceptable, yeah. The way they did
But it would have been nice to have some key for the timeline other than estimating the ages of dogs, because dogs grow at different rates.
Exactly. All right, so on issue 2, we start off with the story of Henry the Poodle, and we see someone breaking into the house, and a dog that is not Henry is running towards the guy, followed by the woman of the house. He attacks her, but she has already called the cops, and they show up. He runs away. But we do see Henry the Poodle while he's running away and he's hiding in one of the alleyways. He spots another woman walking Henry, and so he's already gotten caught and is running away from, and he's already scoping out his next target. This guy's just bad news.
Yeah, I kind of took that as an attack of opportunity, whereas the rest of them were planned. This one he just stumbled into.
Yeah. The next one is Sophie the Papillion. I don't know how to say the name of that
dog. Wait, Pomeranian.
No.
That's how you.
Is that not it?
Papillon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a Pomeranian. Okay.
No.
Okay, good. I was like, that's how you pronounce it?
That's a stretch there.
I was trying to think of something that sounded like that, but no, you're right. I had never heard of that breed, though.
We'll go Papillion, I guess. That's our main character, though, is the short little dog with the pointy ears and everything that's on the covers. And so she is, this is her being let off the leash to roam free at the dog park. She meets the dog napper and Rusty once again. Rusty shows up, and Rusty says that some odd things to Sophie, like, dogs who have ladies always get rescued. The master likes that kind. He doesn't like the dogs who have mans. He says they're too dangerous. So like he's definitely has taken in for Rusty, who's a dog who seems to forget things just like the other ones. He's definitely committed that to long-term memory. While Rusty is talking to Sophie, we see that the owner is talking to the dog napper, and he is upsetting her, and she tells Sophie it's time to go. So once again, the dog napper is kind of pushing his limits with one of these women. The dog napper watches them leave and asks Rusty if he wants to go for a ride, indicating, I'm assuming, that they're going to follow after and we're going to pick up where we left off in the main story there. Which I love. This one makes the most sense because when Sophie gets brought to the house in the main story, Rusty says, something like, "You look familiar. Have we met before?" Something along those lines, to very much go, oh, this one felt like an extended scene more than any of the other ones did.
But I kind of remember, didn't they actually have a scene like this, but I think shorter in Stray Dogs, where they were at the park at the exact same time?
Trying to think, because I just reread it last night.
I thought they did, because I thought this was just like an extended scene as opposed to
Yeah,
a new scene. Here,
I don't remember it, but it could be absolutely. And then so then we meet Earl. Earl's the hound dog, and Earl is at the dog napper's house already, watching a dog named Lainey talk about missing her lady. So this is very similar to how we saw Sophie kind of having a breakthrough remembering her lady. There's a dog previous to Sophie named Lainey that was doing that, and they all thought she was crazy as well. Earl goes off with a Chihuahua named Ramon, and they discuss when the master should be giving treats in between meals, like not when he gives meals, but when does he give the treats? And they go to the master to see about the treats, and he's getting ready for a night out to presumably take another victim. And they spot the treats, and master ends up giving one of them to Earl. And then our last story is of Victor, the Dalmatian. And Victor is a 3-legged firehouse dog who was taken care of by Renee, was the owner, one of the firefighters. Renee is one of the victims from the killer. And so after everything's said and done, and they've caught the killer and all of that, the firefighters, after going to Renee's memorial, take a side trip over to the dog napper's house and burn it, leaving only the remains of the house as well as the memorial for all the victims, including pictures of Renee and Victor.
Victor's my favorite.
Oh,
yeah.
But I also like Imogene and Earl. They're two of my other favorites.
I guess the nice thing about this is, I do really like that ending. It feels like it actually kind of brings a conclusion to the story, where it's like, okay, the killer's house is burnt down, so there's some finality to that. I mean, the dogs are obviously no longer there. We know the dogs have been taken someplace else. So that was kind of like the big thing. Unless you were somebody who just loved the first Stray Dogs and just need some more, there's not really any reason to read this, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because the art is good. I mean, the story's good, but there's
solid,
it doesn't give us anything, So
I think I would love to see it in a collected edition with the other books, but reconfigured to make it more linear. I think that's where they could win with this, is they make a deluxe collected edition of Volume 1 that has dog digs in it, and then that's when I would totally read it again.
Yeah. I was happy to see that we get this glimpse into their backstories, and I was sad to relive some of the deaths, whether it was depicted or just we were somehow reminded of them. And I was frustrated because there really was no story being told for the survivors in this 2-issue series. But like Scott said, what else could they do? What are you going to do? Say, hey, they all got stolen by another serial killer. Now they have to escape again? No,
it's like the Toy Story problem. It's like, how many times can these toys still be together in some type of circumstance?
Yeah.
Well, how long can you come up with odd situations that somehow all of these dogs get back, or at least even several of them get back into a, and if you keep the theme of it being like a horror book, these poor dogs keep getting put in horror situations, it's just like, it's a bit of a stretch. So
I read through it really quickly, and you can't beat the writing and the art, especially the art. But it's just like, okay, it's not what I expected, but I don't know what I was expecting, and I'm glad to have experienced this, but I don't know what'll be the next story. That I do want to see more more books like this involving pets. It doesn't have to be as dark, but it just something, because it's so cool to get into the heads of your cats and dogs. Anybody that's watched any TikTok videos, you just see some of the crazy stuff they do, and you're like, this is what's going on in their heads, man.
Yeah, when somebody puts words to what they're
Yeah.
doing, and actually
Yes.
like even just a little story about like trading the ball for the stick and what's a
Yes.
good enough
Yeah.
stick, and like it makes complete sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I feel like this idea needs to go like, okay, it's like the AMC Walking Dead series. They have that Walking Dead, but then they also have Fear of the Walking Dead. And it's like, you have this one group, but what's happening in the rest of the world? There doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the
Yeah, totally
same
different
group of
dogs.
dogs,
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be dogs. It
that's
could be
true.
cats. It could
Absolutely.
be emus. I don't know, but that's probably not emus. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously more stories that can be told from the perspectives of animals. So,
Yeah.
um, but this just wasn't what I wanted. So I'm just gonna go and say I graded this a fine, which is a 6.0. It's a good read,
Mhm.
but it doesn't add anything. And I mean, I'm not gonna go back and read it again. There's no reason to unless they come up with something new where it's like, oh, I need to remind myself what happened,
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
story. But other than that, it just didn't really add anything. If you loved Stray Dogs, you definitely need to read it, but you're not going to out like you're going to get anything more out of it.
Yeah. I think it's fair. I gave it an 8.0, very fine. It's good team, but what's it really adding to it? Like you said, I like having it in my collection for collectability purposes. I got the movie cover variants of it and everything, so I'm happy to have it. But yeah, I don't think I'll revisit it after we've talked about it. I'm kind of done.
I'll split the difference between you two and go with a 7.0. It
Perfect.
was. I've read a lot of worse comics than this,
Mhm.
and even though there was really nowhere for this to go, I went to sleep thinking, well, that was enjoyable. So, yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that it's not enjoyable, but this is, like one of the things is for me, like if I get an 8 or higher, that's something that I for sure want to own, and it's something I plan to revisit in the
Right.
future, and
Right.
this is not something I plan to revisit in the future. So I just couldn't give it that, 8 or better rating for that reason. So,
Right.
okay, we ready to wrap up
Wanna
this
shake it?
episode with a little CLZ shake? Okay, who wants to go first?
I've got it
Any
open.
volunteers? I got it opened as well. So, yeah. What's
Have at it, Scott.
Okay, all right. So let's see here. Got to get to where I don't cheat and you know. Okay, so I got my whole selection up there. Hope I felt it buzz. See if I can read it. I can't tell what that is. Oh, Micronauts. All right. So Micronauts Volume 2, Issue 18. All right, and I do not remember anything that happens in this comic book. Okay, and I wasn't a huge fan of the second volume of Micronauts, and quite honestly, probably after about the first, 20 or so issues is probably where my, the influence from Microsoft probably started waning. But I mean, gosh, this got Kelly Jones as the penciler. Um, so I'm not familiar. I know the name Peter Gillis, but I couldn't tell you anything that he had written. I recognize that name. But I have this in my collection because Micronauts were my thing, Micronauts ROM and then Star Wars whenever I was younger. And I had several of the Micronauts toys and collected as much of the comics that I have. And I keep wanting these to be, I want Marvel to get the license back so that they can release a collected edition so I can get it on the Marvel Unlimited app and read it more easily as opposed to having to pull out the floppies. That's my ultimate goal, but there you have it. That's my
So
Micronaut.
your first two shakes were licensed properties.
Yes, well, because 10% of my collection is ROM, Micronauts, and Silver Surfer. Because again,
Is that
remember,
right?
my collection is only 1,282 comics. Okay, I have way more than that, but the ones that I consider mine.
Right.
And Micronauts was like 50 something issues for the first run and 20 for the second. ROM is 75 books, and the Silver Surfer series without the annuals is 125 books. So that's a sixth of my personal collection are those three titles. And actually
Okay.
more than so there's a 1 in 6 chance every time I do the shake that one of those titles is going to come up and I'm going to say the exact same thing that I just said.
Okay.
Who's next?
All right, Chad.
All right. Let's see. Figment 2, Issue 2. So
Is this the
Figment was
Disney character?
yes, it is,
Okay.
absolutely. So they had that line of Disney Kingdoms, which I loved. They did comic book series based on rides and even like ideas that didn't quite even make it to full concept that were like just Disney things, and I was just obsessed with it. And so this is Figment 2. I don't really remember the Figment 2 story, but it's the Figment character on adventures. It says Legacy of Imagination, Raising Doubts was the name of the actual issue of it. But yeah, I wish they would do more of these Disney Kingdoms books because I was all about it. Big Thunder
How many
Mountain
issues were in that
Railroad.
series?
I think that this was oh gosh, was this a 4 issue? And because all of them, yeah, there was 4. They all of their things they did were just 4 or 5 issue minis, and they were just they were done, and you kind of, that was it. Seekers of the Weird was another one they did. They did one on the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
And then I think Figment was the only one they actually did 2 miniseries on that. But I think there's only 5 miniseries in total from that Disney Kingdoms line. But I was a big fan.
All right.
How about you, Mike?
Okay. Loading random comic. And I have Wonder Woman Volume 2. And it just says Wonder Woman Volume 2. Oh, number 76. Okay, so this is Volume 2 is the one that it started out as the George Perez written and drawn volume. And after, I don't know, 30 or 40 issues, he went to the writing. But at this point, William Mesner Loebs had taken over the writing chores, and the penciler was Lee Moder. Probably what's most memorable about this issue and lots of the issues that were surrounding it were the Brian Boland covers. And I don't remember this necessarily. I don't know that I've even read it. I've been trying to complete my volume 2 run of Wonder Woman. But this one, it says here in the synopsis that Wonder Woman teamed up or contacts Dr. Fate and asks her to help find out what happened to her mother in the island of Themyscira. So at this point in 1993, Dr. Fate was actually the persona of Kent Nelson's wife, Isra. Is it Isra? Not Isra.
That I don't remember, but that was at the same time like the Bwahaha League was going on, right?
Yeah, it was it was like on the tail end of all of that, but it started out. Yeah, that's where she first made her appearance, and it may have even been there was like a Firestorm deal where they were 2 people kind of combined to become Dr. Fate, her and her stepson, which is kind of creepy in a way. So, but anyway, yeah. And it looks like the villain they faced off against was Cersei, which is one of Wonder Woman's mainstay villains. Yeah, Enza Nelson is Dr. Fate at this time. So, yeah, from 19. Yeah, this is one I need to read yet, so it's not like I can really give you much story about it. But yeah, those Brian Boland covers, they were the covers to look for with Wonder Woman until Adam Hughes came along. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and see how they could help you complete that Wonder Woman collection, where would they contact you at?
Well, that would be m.atchison, ATCHISON, 90@gmail.com.
And Shad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert, SHAAD SCHUBERT. And the Can't Get Rights have a bunch of shows coming up in April, so look that up and check us out there.
Have you posted events for those yet on Facebook? I haven't seen them. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all loaded up. We've got 4 in April, 1 in May, 1 in June, 1 in August right now. Booking
Stupid Facebook not showing me those. So
I know.
Anyway, I'll have to fix that.
I haven't invited anybody yet though, so maybe that's.
Well, still, but if you created one, I should have seen it. So yeah, I don't know.
You muted me on your feed. You were like,
I have not muted you on my feed. All right. So for the record, I have not unfollowed. So I have unfollowed 95% of my quote unquote friends on Facebook, but I have not unfollowed you. So just
Awesome.
be clear about
I'm pretty
that.
quiet on there. So
Yeah, that's good. That's one reason probably.
Well, now that you say that, I've noticed you haven't commented or liked many of my posts. Uh-oh.
I'm not one of those random like people. So
No,
I'm
me
sorry.
either.
You can
it's
find
gotta
me-
mean something.
Yeah, exactly. You can find me at burgcomics.com, burgcomics.com. As we record, it's March 17th. My next show is April 2nd in Benton, Illinois, SI Comic Con. I will be set up there, and this will be my first show in a long time. So I've accumulated a lot of books that I've not had at a show before. So
Wasn't SI Comic Con? Did they do one at the end of last year?
Yes, it was in September, I think, last year,
Okay.
and but that was because of all the COVID pushback.
They just had pushed it back. Okay.
They wanted to be in April, and they got it moved back to April this year. So,
Cool.
And that does it for another episode. Don't forget, swing by Muddy Monster Comics, get your Muddy Monster mini bust from Mike No, and we will be back with another episode. Shad, you want to give us a quick rundown of what our next episode is going to be?
Absolutely. If you want to read along, watch along, we're going to be covering Eternals and Volume 1 of We Only Find Them When They're Dead next time.
And that's Eternals the movie.
That's right. Yes.
And we'll talk to you then.
Stop talking about other people before I push record. Well, I want to say I was very responsible, and I wrote up my notes. I've had them written on a notepad for a week or so, but... And did you forget the notepad again? Nope. Last night, I had the notepad. I was in a hotel room in a different town, and I put them all in a Word document. And I've got it right here in front of me. I thought you were going to say, I want to say I was really responsible, but I can't. That might be the finishing line of that statement in the future at some point or another. It's like me, the first time we had voicemail, Shad. You remember when first time you tried to record a voicemail message? Voicemail, and it takes 17 times. I go, man, I sound like a moron. What the hell? Well, I just stopped caring that I'm sounding like a moron most of the time, so. Yeah, I was like, it doesn't take anything if I got to set up one at work, like a new phone and record something. I don't care. It's like close enough. It's like Scott Reed. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Don't try to back when voicemail first came around, it was like, oh, I gotta get this just right. Hello, you reached the desk of Mike Atchison. Such and such Intelligence Office of the Illinois Department of Corrections, which is an oxymoron. But, and then of course, it never goes that well. It's like, Mike,